Hello, I'm Clint Wilden. Welcome to Anzac Day 2025 on ABC television. A day to pause, to remember and to reflect. The Anzac Day Parade, the biggest events in Perth, is about to take place on St George's Terrace, and as we've done on ABC television for many years, we'll bring it all to you over the next hour or so. Please stay with us. After the parade, we'll go live to Gallipoli, where 110 years ago the troops landed on Anzac Cove. It's a wonderful day here weather-wise, so let's begin by welcoming my co-commentators today, Paul Salpietro and Steve Danaher. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Clint. As you said, a bit of a brisk start to the day, but I think we're looking forward to a beautiful sunny day, and it'd be great for the marchers as well as those standing on the sides watching these troops march by.
Good morning, Steve, Clint. Thank you for having us back again for Anzac Day 2025.
It is a terrific day weather-wise as we're watching the saluting dais. There is Leader of the State Opposition, Basil Zemplis, Honourable Paul Papalia there, also representing the Leader of the Opposition federally, Senator Michaelia Cash, Premier Roger Cook standing as well. We've also got His Excellency the Governor Chris Dawson alongside many of them today. There'll be the State President Duncan Anderson, who we'll see very shortly as our marchers are just starting to make their way down St George's Terrace. It's been an interrupted start to proceedings. There was a gas leak on the terrace, which is why they're not as far down as we would normally see, but the Anzac Day Parade of 2025. Perth has certainly turned on the weather, and wherever you're watching around the great state of WA, it's outstanding that you could join us over the next hour or so. Plenty of youngsters have turned up as well. Nice to see they've got the SunSmart hats on. I reckon that those in the hoodies will need to dispense with them by the end of the march as a little bit more sunshine finds its way through the tall buildings either side of the terrace. They're about 5 or 6 deep in some parts as we watch the State President, the Service Chiefs make their way down to start proceedings. The RSL President, of course, Mr Duncan Anderson, alongside him to begin. We'll see them very shortly. Leading the way there, Commander Ivan Ingham, AM, the Senior Australian Defence Force Officer in WA. He's the Senior Defence Rep for all matters of strategic significance in WA. Formerly, of course, among many roles, the Commander of HMAS Perth between 2014 and 2017. Brigadier Damien Wushel, who's just taken command of 13th Brigade back in March, had the transfer of authority parade at Irwin Barracks, taking over from Brigadier Amanda Williamson, and Wing Commander Greg Porsche of number 25 Squadron, who's been the commanding officer there since January 2025 for the second time in this march. It's going to be a terrific day, and we'll bring it all to you here on ABC television before heading to Gallipoli. 110 years on, it's quite remarkable to think, since the troops landed on what is now known as Anzac Cove. And we're just seeing the first shots there of the mounted police. And of course, since 1834, the WA Mounted Police Section has provided continuous service to the people of WA, the tradition being that the police lead the parade through the city before the military. It signifies that the civil authority is granting permission for the military to march through the city. Steve and Paul, it's always a wonderful day, and there's a lot to look forward to over the next hours.
Absolutely, and directly behind the police, the Royal Australian Signals Corps troops have been given the honour of leading the parade this year, and the reason for that is that they're celebrating their 100th anniversary as on the 14th of February. On the 14th of February, the Corps marked 100 years of service to the nation. Over the past century, the Corps has been at the forefront of communications, evolving alongside technological advances to ensure effective communication and control for the Army in both peace and war. From the early days, the telegraphy and radio, to today's cutting-edge digital communications, their innovation and flexibility have played a vital role in Australia's defence and national security. Today, as leaders in electronic warfare, signals intelligence, telecommunications, IT and cybersecurity, The Royal Australian Corps of Signals continues to be the communication backbone of the Australian Army in support of the Joint Force. Oh, and I should have mentioned, Bob Coventry, the president of the association, is leading today with many members there, both regular and reserve, behind him. We can also see banners there, 152 Signal Squadron, which is the SAS Signal Squadron, 109 Signal Squadron based at Irwin Barracks, which is the reserve unit. AWST played a very significant role during World War II with signals, and Western Command's signals as well. And there we go, Certecito 100. What does Certecito mean? It means swift and sure, which is the way they send and receive their communications. Accuracy is paramount. And we can see they've served in all sorts of theatres, World War I right through to Korea, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam, and their operational duties today as we speak.
And behind them, the Royal Australian Navy Band of WA, and then we're starting to see the Royal Australian Navy, interesting, marching 6 abreast today. There's expected around 700 Navy personnel in attendance. 7 platoons, 2 from Stirling, HMAS Stirling being represented, HMAS Perth, HMAS Arunta, HMAS Stewart, HMAS Stort, and HMAS Parramatta. Those represented today in the crisp white uniforms of the senior service as they make their way past the saluting days.
It's interesting, most of the ships represented today of the Anzac class frigates, the Arunta, Parramatta, Perth and the Stewart. The Arunta is actually an FFH fitted for helicopters, where the others are, I think FFG might be the correct terminology, fitted for guns. And the Stalwart is a supply ship and oiler. And there we can see some members of Stirling and the various campaign medals that are being worn on their chests.
Those from HMAS Arunta, the second Anzac class frigate of the Royal Australian Navy. Laid down in 1995, commissioned 12th of December 1998. Performs a wide range of duties, including border protection and patrols in northern Australian waters, and has had several deployments to the Persian Gulf. Current commanding officer, Commander David Clarkson. And the HMAS Stewart, the fourth of the Anzac class frigates, based on the German Miko 200 frigate, commissioned 17th of August in 2002. It's the third ship to bear the name of the Royal Australian Navy. Current commanding officer, Commander Ryan Betchley. And from the Stalwart, commissioned on the 13th of November in 2021. Second and final class auxiliary oiler. It's a replenishment ship built for the Royal Australian Navy. It's the third Royal Australian Navy to bear the name after the S-class destroyer HMAS Stort 1 and then the single class destroyer HMAS Stort 2. Commanded by Commander Adam Simeone, who joined the Royal Australian Navy back in January 2001. Behind the Navy, we can see the Australian Army Band Perth, sub-unit of the Australian Army Band. There's 11 different bands located throughout the nation. Once the Western Command Band from the Band of the 5th Military District, the Australian Army Band Perth formed at Swan Barracks in December 1949.
Leading the uniform contingent today is the headquarters of 13 Brigade. led today by Colonel Catai, former commanding officer of 11th Air Battalion. Next in the order of march is the men of the and women of the 10th Light Horse Regiment, seen with their distinctive emu plumes in their slouch hats. The regiment was raised in October 1914 and was the only light horse regiment to be raised in Western Australia during the First World War. Following behind is the 13th Engineer Regiment. The 13th Field Regiment is one of the longest continually serving units within Western Australia, with a history that goes back to the 1912 Kitchener Reforms. Engineers are responsible for a wide array of battlefield tasks, including demolition and construction.
There's the Australian Army Band, Perth, pipes and drums.
So what are those flags we're seeing there, Paul, that just in the behind the pipes and drums? What are they?
They are the colours, the regimental colours of the 16th Battalion, Royal West Australian Regiment. The colours adorned with battle honours from the First and Second World Wars. Honours that the unit and its predecessors have earned on campaign.
And it looks like we have the 16th Battalion there, the Cameron Company, is that what it's called?
The Cameron Highlanders, yes. They wear the distinctive Scottish attire, which is a nod to their traditional past as the Cameron Highlanders of Western Australia. One of two Army Reserve units that still wear traditional Scottish attire on ceremonial occasion. Following behind, we have the 13th Combat Service Support Battalion, or 13th CSB. The battalion is made up of support personnel that provide logistical support to the combat units of 13th Brigade. 13th CSB was formed in 1995 with the amalgamation of several sub-units of 13th Brigade.
It's a fantastic view of the Air Force in step there. Wonderful job.
And leading the way in front of them, the Australian Air Force Cadets, the Drum Corps, who certainly bring a great deal of spectacle to the Anzac Day parade every year. Anzac Day 2025 on ABC television. Clint Wilden with you alongside my co-commentators Steve Danaher and Paul Salpietro. It's another wonderful day in the city as the parade continues. Join us, of course, after the parade. We will go live to Gallipoli.
I would suggest what we're seeing at the moment is members of RAF Base Pierce, various units there. It's a training base for pilots, and we can see that on the chests of various people there. There's some foreign service as well as service with Australian forces.
RAF Base Pierce. Primary role remains pilot training, but it's the only permanent RAF base on the West Coast, and still therefore has a significant logistics role. And they're the working dogs, always a popular part of the Anzac Day parade. Part of the number 25 squadron, they provide security to bases, to assets, to aircraft. He's got a big cheer, particularly from the youngsters that are lining St George's Terrace today as we look down the terrace to another very popular part of the Anzac Day Parade. The Jeeps, the military vehicles, making their way down the terrace right now.
Worth a mention to the veteran Tom Newbury, 105-year-old Second World War veteran, served with the 4th Battalion in New Guinea and Borneo. He's riding today in the Model T Patrol, being driven by Sean Curran. Fantastic to see you on parade today, Tom.
Hard to believe that he's 104 years of age. He looks very sprightly there, sitting in the passenger seat of the Model T.
There he is. He only, in his wartime service, he spent over 2 years in the Pacific with only 24 days of leave back in Australia. Well done, mate.
And in the shot at the moment, we see George Goldie, 104 years of age. He's being driven by his son. We see that George was in the 4th Australian Beach Signal Section. He did some work in Borneo. Extremely difficult work on the beaches in Borneo there.
That's Barry Wanstall, RAAF vet. Austin Chan, beautifully restored.
And there we have some Rhodesian veteran there, with a Vietnam chap in the rear. Oh, giving us a wave.
Hello to you, sir. A few Vietnam veterans, Roger Lingard and Laurie Sullivan. A wonderfully restored Jeep.
And they're both members of the Armoured Corps. One was wearing a Prince of Wales's hat badge, and the other one was wearing a cavalry hat badge, I think.
Rhodesian veteran in the rover there, Tim Gluten. AWST Jeep, Jeep 11, you can see at the very front. Flight Lieutenant Peter Lillyman, the City of Perth Squadron. And that's Flight Sergeant John Wilson, again from the City of Perth Squadron, the RAAF in that Jeep. Now we get into the vehicles for those who can't march. Chance for them to make their way down the terrace. Ray McEwen is the driver for car number 2.
I think Graham's been doing this role for about 30 years or so. Devotes his time. And in his vehicle we have Len McKenna, 101 years old next week. Serves as a wireless operator air gunner in Europe in the RAAF. And this is his first Anzac Day parade. We have Angie Stoll there. She was in the Rands during the 1980s. And along with there with Jan Banks.
See the banner of Legacy WA, providing support to families of deceased and incapacitated veterans. Still a very important role to play even to today. Iconic Australian charity established back in 1923, so now with 100+ years of support. According to their website, Legacy WA currently supports more than 2,500 people, all of whom are part of a family that has been touched by loved ones' service to our nation. Services include relief from financial hardship, advice, counselling, and assistance with children's education. Very, very important charity organisation.
And here we have the banners of the major conflicts that Australians have served in since Second World War. We need to remember that the casualties for World War II amounted to about 90,000 in total. So if you're watching the football game this afternoon, look around the MCG and just think for a moment of what you see, and that was the number of our casualties, both killed, wounded, prisoner of war, died in training.
WA Brass Band, history dating more than 6 decades, leading those banners down the terrace. With Damien Bushell taking the salute on the dais.
Vietnam banner. It's this year is the 65th anniversary of the main force going into to Vietnam in 1965. That was the 1 RAR group with supporting elements, of course, and they were joined by a field battery from New Zealand, putting the NZ in Anzac. Australian peacekeeping, usually the Blue Beret boys. Been doing peacekeeping. Australia's been involved in peacekeeping since 1947 and been active ever since with peacekeepers around the globe on a constant basis.
There's the City of Perth band. Comprising of 3 bands: City of Perth Brass Band, the City of Perth Concert Band, and the City of Perth Marching Corps. Over 125 years old.
And behind them is the National Servicemen, 1965 to 72. It's 1972 when Gough Whitlam got into office and he abolished national service. Though some did decide to stay and complete their obligation, and the very last national servicemen were discharged in March 1974.
Up next is the servicewomen of the Australian Defence Force, which includes the Women's Royal Australian Naval Service, Women's Royal Australian Army Corps, Women's Royal Australian Air Force. The association was formed in 1970, and I believe this is the 3rd year the associations have banded together and marching as one contingent.
The Rams, the RAC.
The WAFs. Lots of acronyms in the military.
The distinctive sound of the Scotch Collie Pipe Band. The Scotch have been involved in the Anzac Day Parade for many years. Continue to do an outstanding job. From the Perth CBD, this is the Anzac Day Parade of 2025. On ABC television. Coming up after the parade, we'll take you live to Gallipoli, 110 years on. The landing of the Anzac troops. It is now known as Anzac Code. That's all to come. Stick around. Clint Wilden with you alongside Steve Danaher and Paul Salpietro as we continue our coverage of the Anzac Day Parade with the Perth CBD on St George's Terrace.
The Royal Australian Navy veterans on parade at the moment. HMAS Melbourne, Sydney. There's some Fleet Air Arm chaps down there. You can tell by the wings on the chest. Either they're helicopter or fixed wing jockeys. Served, all the way from Korea, Malaysia, Vietnam, and still currently today. First time for the Navy Health Services on parade. So we can see there by the insignia, the medics, and of course, one of the greatest things or the best thing we need when you're out on patrol or on operations is to know that you've got some medical assistance close by if at all needed. HMAS Perth, World War II. The first Perth was sunk in Sunda Straits, and the current Perth seen operational service Timor, in the Persian Gulf, and onwards. The Arunta, oh, there we go, and there is Jack Lacroix leading the push there for the N class, or sorry, the Bataan and Tribal class destroyers. Jack turns 99 in September, so hope to see you again next year, Jack. And his family have been carrying the banner for many a year now. HMAS Melbourne Association, 3 Melbournes we can see there. The second Melbourne was a Majestic class aircraft carrier, and the current Melbourne is a Adelaide class guided missile frigate. HMAS Darwin. The Darwin has served in Timor, the Persian Gulf, Iraq, and was decommissioned in 2017. HMAS Sydney, we can see there were 5 versions of the Sydney. The first Sydney was involved in a significant action off the coast of Cocos Islands when it took out the German raider Emden, and then the second Sydney was lost off WA when the Cormorant got a little bit too close, and with a loss of all lives, 645 I believe. Defensively equipped merchant ships, the naval gunners. The merchant navy lost many troops or sailors during the war, taking valuable supplies and men and equipment to war zones across the globe.
Ubiquitous mobile phones capturing every moment, just as we are on ABC television. Every band, everyone we're seeing marching down the terrace here on Anzac Day of 2025. As you can see, the crowds 4 to 5 deep.
You can see the Royal Australian Armoured Corps Association, Western Australian branch, being led today by former Brigadier White. Fantastic to see. Many of the members of the association are former members of the 10th Light Horse Regiment. Again with their distinctive emu plumes, this time in their berets.
Yes, and the emu plume was born out of Queensland, I understand. Queensland Mounted Infantry during a great shearer strike in 1891, and that's where the beginning of that tradition came from. And of course, you know, those competitions of plucking emu plumes to impress girlfriends would not be held today.
Now we can see the 1st Armoured Regiment Association, led today by Mr. Bob Snape, who served in South Vietnam. The unit took part in heavy fighting in Vietnam, where it earned battle honours for Coral Balmoral and Bin Ba, alongside 5 RAR.
Also known as bunker busters. With their large guns, they would get close to the enemy bunkers and destroy them, allowing the infantry to move forward with relative safety, as safe as it can be in a war zone, of course.
Mention the emu plumes, nice touch from the Fremantle Dockers tonight. They've got traditional white chevrons on the front of their playing jersey. Will be replaced by 6 emu plumes. Nice stylistic touch, going back to what is the Len Hall game, of course, and now, unfortunately, the sad passing of Arthur Leggett, medal being struck in his honour for the best player in that game. So again, the ability for Anzac Day and those stories to reach out and touch people right across the state and the nation.
All Australian engineers!
Here we can see the gunners of the 2nd 3rd Field Regiment. The regiment served with distinction during the Second World War in the South Pacific, during the campaigns in New Guinea and Borneo.
They do say that gunners bring a sense of decorum to the battlefield, to what otherwise would be just a vulgar brawl.
Who says that?
The gunners. I think it might have been Napoleon or Wellington said something of that nature. So it does go back a little while. The army isn't like it used to be.
No, the banners, one of the banners does say once a gunner, always a gunner. There's the Brigadier Damien Bushell taking the salute. New person in charge of 13th Brigade, the Royal Australian Engineers.
Yes, being led today by its president, Russell McIntyre. Royal Australian Engineers have served in every conflict alongside Australian troops since the Boer War, providing support to the combat corps of the Australian Army. Here we can see some of the members of the Royal Australian Army Survey Corps with their distinctive purple berets. The corps was established in 1915 and continued until 1996, at which point it was amalgamated into the Royal Australian Engineers.
Responsible for things, the Royal Australian Engineers, like mine detection, clearance, explosive detection, dog handlers, bomb recovery and disposal, building construction, road and airfield construction, the sappers.
Royal Australian Regiment Association, led by Peter Heaney. Today, the RAR was born out of the 3 Australian battalions that were in the British Commonwealth Occupation Forces in Japan, and they were redesignated 1, 2 and 3 Royal Australian Regiment. And there we have 1st Battalion there. Duty first is their motto, and they've served everywhere from Korea, Vietnam, Somalia, Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan. 2nd Battalion, second to none is their motto. Alex Nee is leading the push today. Alex is the first to a Vietnam 2 RAR man. And there we have 3rd Battalion, followed by the 4th. All the battalions did 2 tours in Vietnam, apart from 9 RAR, they just did a single tour. And 4 RAR, first national servicemen into Borneo, actually. And they were redesignated 2nd Commando Regiment in 2009. 3 RAR, some are wearing the Cherry Beret. It was an airborne battalion for a while there. And then it went back to being, I'll call it a standard battalion. 5 RAR, the Tiger Battalion, and we can see that by the banner. Vietnam, Timor, Afghanistan, Timor-Leste, Solomons, Iraq. 5 RAR has been to a lot of places. They've now amalgamated with 5-7 RAR again, only at the beginning of this year. We see veterans there of Iraq and Afghanistan. 6th Battalion. 6th Battalion was the only battalion to be awarded a VC in Afghanistan. Kerrigan, I think the chap's name was. I'm just trying to get that right. And there we have 7 RAR, and it's being led by Graham Edwards. Graham lost his legs in a mine incident in Vietnam. 7 RAR is known as the Pig Battalion, and we can see a couple of images of piggies there, and they're quite proud of that for some reason.
So see behind them the Grey 8.
The Grey 8, yes. 2 tours of Vietnam. The 8th Battalion now is amalgamated with the 9th Battalion, so 8-9 RAR.
The Anzac Day Parade of 2025 on AWST television, coming to you from the streets of the Perth CBD. Please stay with us after the parade. We'll be heading live to Gallipoli, 110 years on from when the troops landed at Anzac Cove.
And then we have 2-4 RAR, another amalgamated unit. They were amalgamated in the 70s, and have seen service, operational service, in Afghanistan and Timor. There's Duncan Warren there behind the banner in the centre. Duncan was an officer with 8th Battalion, I think 2nd tour, and I should mention he was once brigadier of 13 Brigade. Nine RAR would probably have the youngest Vietnam veterans. Their tour was quite late during the Vietnam days, and hence only just got the 1 tour in because they were created for Vietnam alone. But right towards the end of the late 60s, and we were out of Vietnam by the end of combat troops were out by the end of 1972, with the handful staying until April 73. Australian Army Training Team, first in, last out. One of their stalwart members' funeral was held only on Wednesday, and that is Cedric Shorty Turner. He had served with 1 SAS Company, 2 SAS Squadron in Borneo, and was with the training team in 67, 68, when things were, well, let's say a little feisty. So condolences to the Turner family.
Worth mentioning, if you are wondering too, medals worn on the left breast are for the ones bestowed upon the wearer. If you're wearing them on the right side of your jacket, your right breast, they're next of kin medals. So sometimes you'll see people marching with both. If you're wondering why they're on respective sides, that is the reason for them. You can see Those gentlemen there with medals on the right breast, wearing them for next of kin. On the left, those that have been bestowed upon you yourself. Certainly Minister Paul Papalia with quite a number of them, as you can see on the saluting dash, just standing behind the Brigadier.
Z Specials, World War II. What was interesting is that Blamey decided that the war diaries for the Z Specials would be destroyed, and therefore their history is still secret pretty much today. Special Air Service Regiment, behind them, John Juvie Matten has been given the honour of leading the association this year, and the reason for that is because of unrecognised heroism during Vietnam. In 3 Squadron's first tour and his attempt to save the life of his best friend, Russell Copeman, it went unrecognised in the award system, however, very much recognised amongst the cohort of the SAS Regiment. Dan Fortune on screen there.
There we have some of the men and women of the Australian Commando Association. Australian Commandos formed as the independent companies during the Second World War, saw service in the Pacific, with today's Australian Special Forces drawing their lineage from those early units. Some descendants of the 2nd 8th Commando Squadron on parade today as well. Again, unfortunately, not many of the original veterans are still with us.
.161 Recce flight from Vietnam. They started out with fixed-wing aircraft, transferring across, correction, Bell helicopters onto fixed-wing, and they did a lot of reconnaissance work and propaganda, dropping leaflets and such like.
Next we have the Royal Australian Army Ordnance Corps Association, led today by Lieutenant Colonel Warren Evans. The motto of the Royal Australian Army Ordnance Corps, "To the warrior his arms." These are the men and women responsible for providing the logistical support to the combat units of the Australian Army. Next we can see the banner of the Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers Association of Western Australia, led today by its president, Ray Mitzi. The association can trace its history back to 1950, when members of the Midland Workshop, now the Midland Markets, raised the association. Many members of the unit on parade today are Vietnam veterans.
1st Australian Field Hospital just marching by. Very important once again, medical attention to troops in Vietnam, and it's still serving today on operations as well as exercises with the Army.
Now we can see the Royal Australian Army Pay Corps. The Pay Corps is one of the smallest corps in the Australian Army and was established in September 1914. Interestingly, it has served in every theatre of war and operation that the Australian Army has participated in since 1914.
And just of interest, Gary Wallace is marching today with the Pay Corps, and he's recently written the history of the Army Pay Corps in WA, Boer War to 2018. And it can be viewed at the State Library. There's a copy there if anybody is interested.
There we see the banner of the Royal Australian Army Nursing Corps Association, which was formed in 1981.
Skyville Officer Training Centre from New South Wales. It was created specifically to train junior officers for the Vietnam War. And they were drawn from national servicemen. And the idea was if a national serviceman showed a little bit of extra promise, then that would be identified in the first couple of weeks of their training, and offered an opportunity to go to Skyville and serve, become an officer and serve as a platoon commander in Vietnam. The vast majority of Skyville graduates did not actually serve overseas, but did serve in land bases around Australia. And those that did, from what I understand, certainly showed their mettle.
Right.
Royal Australian Air Force for Vietnam, 1962. 75, yes, planes did go in 1975 for evacuation. We had 3 squadrons there, 2 squadron Canberra bombers, 9 squadron with helicopters, and 35 squadron Caribous. 3 telecommunication unit, sneaky peaky listeners they were, and they're the longest serving operational unit in the Australian Defence Force, if my memory is correct. Well over 50 years. And doing the work that they do, and it's usually pretty much on the QT, on the quiet. New Zealand forces put the NZ in Anzac for us, and we have New Zealanders there. They served with Australians, of course, from World War I, World War II, Korea, yes, in fact everywhere. It's always been pretty much an Anzac tradition. And there we have a chap with his EOD bomb kit. He's pushing down the terrace. I hope that's not going to explode, sir. Naval cadets there. Cadets range from the age of 13 to 18, and the idea of that is to instill some, well, a little bit of discipline, as well as how should I describe it? Community spirit. Australian Army cadets. They have a headquarters in Irwin Barracks. And again, they range from 13 to 18 years of age. The ethos of creating valuable citizens for the community, as well as they do some adventurous stuff. They do, some outdoor exercises, military exercises and such.
Anzac Day Parade of 2025, brought to you by ABC Television. Clint Wilden alongside Steve Danaher, Paul Salpietro. Great to see the cadets marching along. Really such an important role in developing the youngsters. Confidence building. Again, we see a number of young people with medals on their right breast, those won by next of kin, and they're going to be shown, of course, today, the ones in your left have been bestowed upon the wearer. Great crowd in again. It was a little bit chilly this morning, but overall magnificent weather-wise here in Perth in the CBD. The dawn service this morning. Now, of course, into the parade. And then from here on ABC television, at the conclusion of this, we'll take you live to Gallipoli. Plenty of anniversaries always being commemorated, but 110 years on now since the landing of troops on what is now known as Anzac Cove in Turkey. There's also, of course, the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, and there's always some discussion about when that date happens to be. Here we go with the Royal Air Force veterans.
Yes, and the Royal Air Force has been in existence since 1918 and has served in every theatre as well. At the moment, we have the Airborne Forces Association. We can see the Cherry Berets, the Sandy Berets of the SAS. One of the banner holders there is wearing medals for the Falklands campaign, Gulf War, and other modern campaigns that the Air Force has been involved in.
You can see the North American Veterans Unit on parade today. There we can see some members of the contingent, the naval personnel. This chap in the front here with the bomber jacket on. Looks like a recipient of the Purple Heart. With a bit of cadence there, which is not very common in the Australian Defence Force, but really nice to hear.
N-class destroyers. One that's of significance is the Nizam. It had a situation off Cape Lewin where in rough seas that the ship nearly capsized and they lost 10 men overboard. There's a memorial at the lighthouse down at Cape Lewin. And it's a very poignant area.
You can see the descendants of the 2nd 7th Australian Field Regiment, which was an artillery unit which served with distinction during the Second World War in the Middle East and also in the Pacific campaigns.
Peter Kennedy, formerly of ABC television, our political reporter for many a year. Great fan of the Perth Football Club as well. Always lovely to see Peter about.
We see the banner of the City of Perth Regiment being the 11th and 2nd 11 battalions. The battalion was famous for its pyramid photo during the First World War, which every member of the battalion took a photo on this side of Cheops Pyramid in Egypt. The battalion was one of the first in on Gallipoli on Anzac Day 1915. Served with distinction throughout the First and the Second World War, primarily the Battle of Regiments in Crete in 1941.
And it's a timely entry into Arthur Leggett. He was captured at Greece during World War II and only passed away on the April 6, aged 106, surrounded by his family. There will be a state funeral held for him on Saturday, May 10. He was trained as a signaller responsible for crucial communications between the companies of the battalion, and at age 21 went into the bag, as they say, as a prisoner of war, was interned in Germany, and on his return to Australia pretty much dedicated his life to that of looking after ex-POWs. And he was the president of the Ex-Prisoners of War Association, WA, for 29 years, until his death, and he's survived by 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren and 10 great-grandchildren.
And of course had a long role with Fremantle, reading the ode on a number of occasions in the Len Hall game. And his name will always be remembered from now, with the medal being struck in his honour, the Arthur Leggett Medal, that will be awarded to the best on ground in the Leonard Hall games between Fremantle and their AFL opponents from now into the future. Lovely touch from the Fremantle Dockers. Of course, the Leonard Hall tribute game has been an annual Anzac Day match played in honour of Leonard Hall, part of the 10th Light Horse Brigade at Gallipoli. When passing away in 1999, he was WA's last surviving World War I veteran. Passed away at 101 years of age.
And you can see the 2nd 16th Battalion Association today. The association's president, the Honourable Bill Graydon, who is 104 years old, unfortunately is not marching today due to ill health. The battalion is most well known for its service on the Kokoda track during the defence of New Guinea, Second World War. Served onwards afterward to Borneo, including Balikpapan, and currently exists as the 16th Battalion Royal West Australian Regiment as an Army Reserve unit located at Irwin Barracks in Karrakatta.
Taking the salute there again, Brigadier Damien Bushell, and of course alongside him, His Excellency the Governor Chris Dawson, AC AMP. As the saluting dais. It's an eyes right today.
2nd 28th Battalion Association there with the famous Tobruk Tea, which was the colour patch awarded to the battalion after its service during the siege of Tobruk in North Africa. The battalion suffered heavily during the Battle of Ruin Ridge in 1942, where unfortunately most of its members were captured and went into the bag. The battalion was reformed and later saw service in the Pacific Campaign during the later stages in Borneo.
An ACU Swan Regiment Drum Corps raced in 2002. Sitting at the front, those banners that Paul was just speaking about. And the second.
The Double Reds of Timor.
Yes, they'd served on Timor as well as New Britain, and recently they were presented, the battalion and association was presented with the Order of Timor-Leste by the President Jose Ramos Horta on the 26th of November last year for the dedication of what the soldiers did during the war and the ongoing dedication, the association support that they provide to the Timorese people today.
The 2nd 6th Cavalry Commando Association today. Originally raised as an armoured reconnaissance regiment, saw service in New North Africa, attached to the 6th Division. It was later reorganised into a commando regiment for service in New Guinea during the final stages of the Second World War. Once again, unfortunately, no veterans of the association marching in today's parade, but great to see some relatives,
including a spot there in the 2nd in the white shirt, one of my nephews, Heidi Riley. Nice to see him marching in memory of some of your relatives in the 2nd.
2nd 13 Field Ambulance, a very tough job. They'd served throughout the Middle East and then into the islands, and a very difficult task in the islands, trying to sort out wounded and get them back to proper health and care at the field hospitals and return to Australia, of course.
Following behind is the 2nd 32nd Battalion Association, remembered for its distinguished service in the Western Desert at Tobruk and El Alamein. Unit suffered 214 killed and 567 wounded during the Second World War. And it looks like leading the parade is a descendant of a Victoria Cross winner, possibly Starcevic.
Yeah, 2nd 43rd, sounds about right, doesn't it? And of course he would be wearing the Victoria Cross Group on his right-hand side, as Clint was talking about just a little bit earlier.
With the better party of the 2nd 43rd Battalion. Battalion served with distinction at Tobruk, El Alamein, Syria, Borneo. Battalion was re-raised in 1966 as a National Service Battalion in South Australia. Some descendants of the 2nd 48th Battalion. Battalion was the most highly decorated infantry battalion in the Commonwealth during the Second World War, with 4 members of its ranks being awarded the Victoria Cross.
Rats at the Brook Remembrance Association. The whole idea of a Remembrance Association is so that we never forget. And of course there's the Rats at the Brook Memorial at Kings Park. And they hold events throughout the year in remembrance of the Rats. And on screen there we can see the police contingent of ex-United Nations police officers. Australian police have served in many, many theatres under the badge and the beret of the United Nations, with an ongoing commitment in Cyprus.
WA Police Rangers a short moment ago. There's the WA Fire and Emergency Service Concert Band. Baker leading the band today. First established as the 44th Battalion, Channel 7 band, Perth Concert Band, and finally now the WA Fire and Emergency Services Concert Band. Community band. There's a lot of work around Perth and WA. Fire and Emergency Services Cadet Corps, and with them the Department of Fire and Emergency Services too.
It looks like we've got volunteers on marching at the moment. An integral part of DFES.
Victoria Park Brass Band. Their distinctive red blazers. Actually have the RWA 460 Squadron insignia on their blazers. They used to march near the Victoria Park Brass Band and knew that by giving their insignia to the band, it would ensure that it would always be seen on Anzac Day. Once again, the Victoria Park Brass Band wanted to be part of the RSL Anzac Day Parade.
Republic of Vietnam Veterans Association of Western Australia. From World War II right through to 1975, Vietnam had been at conflict, and with the loss of quite a number of their servicemen, along with our own, and effect on the civilian population. 1954 or 53, they had the Second Indochina War, which was a Cold War era proxy war that occurred in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Oh, there we go. From December 56 to the fall of Saigon on the 30th of April 1975. You might remember those poignant photos of the North Vietnamese tank bursting through the gates of the presidential palace in Saigon. Greek-Australian forces, they were our resistance fighters during World War II and served in Korea alongside Australians. Indian Defence Forces, led by Major Aman Multani, who was served with the 28th Battalion, the Punjab Regiment. The Indians have fought alongside with the Commonwealth for many, many years. Strong history with the British Empire, World War I, World War II. Korea, they supplied a medical hospital, and they've been very heavy in UN peacekeeping over the years. And of course, they have their own regional issues today, which keeps them very, very busy.
Colour, noise added to the parade, as we can see here by the AWST band. And behind them, the Sikh ex-servicemen also marching in the Anzac Day Parade 2025. Korean Veterans Association in WA.
Yes, led today by Jinkil Lee, president of the association. During the Korean War, which went from 1950 to mid-1953, over 1 million casualties, all sides. It's still an uneasy peace today on the 38th parallel. It's the 75th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War this year. Australian forces committed 77 Squadron, which was in Japan at the time. A couple of ships were in the area, and then 3 RAR, or Royal Australian Regiment, was the 1st Battalion to step foot in Korea in September of 1950. South Korea certainly bore the brunt of fighting and suffering at the same time, and of course two very different countries these days, with the North and South Korea. South African members, military members associations, Samoa. We can see some berets there with airborne. Fought alongside Australians during World War I, World War II, Boer War, and their greater border conflicts 1960 to the 80s. Rhodesians, again, had served in World War I and World War II. They had a bush war which lasted for about 15 years, but they were also integral with training fighter and bomber pilots during World War II.
Australian Red Cross formed in 1914 on the outbreak of the First World War. One of the largest humanitarian network in the world, 190 national societies around the world. And then after them, the Scouts Association, WA branch, and then the Girl Guides. Membership of 9 million girls and women in 153 countries marching today as part of the Anzac Day Parade in 2025. Clint Wilden with you, alongside me, Steve Danaher and Paul Salpietro, heading to Gallipoli very shortly. It's the 110th anniversary of the landing of Anzac Cove.
And much colour there with the descendants of Papua New Guinea, termed in those days the Fuzzy Wuzzies, but certainly they were the porters that made the difference between success and failure. Bringing up well-needed supplies, food, ammunition, and also taking back wounded to the medical facilities. Probably without their assistance, the New Guinea campaign, particularly in the early days, may well have ended very, very differently.
Described as the angels for our troops, for what they are able to do. Families of Polish veterans marching as well today. See their banner there. So we start to conclude the Anzac Day Parade of 2025. And Chinese World War I and World War II Defence Force descendants.
Yes, they contribute about 450 million troops to the victory of World War II on the battlefields. And their aim today is hoping to increase the friendship relations between the two countries.
Crowds have stayed around, those that have come along to St George's Terrace in the Perth CBD. Outstanding day weather-wise. Crisp start, but it's warmed up. And the march impeccably observed. Still the odd person just straining for a last look. Youngsters leaning on the fence. Handshakes all round on the saluting dais. It's, again, you can see the number of people absolutely delighted by what they've seen today. And thank you to you, wherever you've been watching, for being with us on ABC television. Once again, it's our pleasure to bring the Anzac Day Parade to you, wherever you happen to be around the great state of WA. Before we head to Gallipoli, let's pause for a moment. We've got some time for one of the most beautiful pieces of music written on a theme of war. I speak of Benedictus. It's a beautiful piece of music and some haunting images as well as we commemorate Anzac Day in 2025. And if you get a chance to say g'day to a veteran today, thank them for their service. If you see a current serving man or woman, thank them for what they're doing for their nation as well. Clint Wilden alongside Steve Danaher and Paul Salpietro. And it's worth touching base on a couple of the big anniversaries, and one of them, of course, Steve and Paul, the 80th end of World War II anniversary. Though there are, of course, as always, some discussions about what is the actual date of that, be it victory in Europe or victory over Japan, victory in the Pacific.
Yes, well, there are actually 3 dates, but we'll talk about 2, and that is Victory in Europe Day. And that came about on Tuesday, the 8th of May, 1945. And as we know, Adolf Hitler had committed suicide on the 30th of April. And the government was handed over to the Reich President, Karl Donitz, who was quite a famous naval commander and a honourable service person. But the last shots fired actually on the Eastern Front were on the 11th of May. And I dare say there were a number of retributions still going on for quite some time in Europe. So anyway, the 8th of May is the official day for what's known as VE Day. And then down in this part of the world, we have Victory over Japan Day, sometimes known as Victory in the Pacific Day. And that was when the Imperial Japanese surrendered in World War II, and that was on board the USS Missouri, I think it was, and that was on the 15th of August. However, the Americans celebrate the 2nd of September because that's when the surrender document was signed, but we do it on the 15th of August. So that's the official day for VJ Day for the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. And for the US, it's actually the 2nd of September. And it was done on the Missouri, yes, in Tokyo Bay on the 15th. So there we have it. It's not one day for the cessation of fighting in World War II or victory. There are 2 days involved. Chance now
For our current servicemen and women to catch up, have a chat. The RSL club in the city will be very busy today. A chance to wander around and catch up with family and friends. And of course, that gentleman in the background just having a little bit of fun, as I hope everyone involved with the march. Hello to you two ladies as well. Certainly do for the rest of Anzac Day. It's been an absolute privilege on this most spectacular of Perth days. It is a postcard-like day in the city of Perth to bring you the Anzac Day Parade for 2025, as we've done for so many years. And my big thanks to you, Steve Danaher and Paul Salpietro. Thank you so much for being involved again today.
And thank you, Clint, for inviting us, or inviting myself, and on behalf of Paul, and I'm sure he can speak for himself, thank you.
Thank you very much, mate. Fantastic day as always.
Well done to everyone who took part, and well done to everyone who stood alongside the parade route. It's impeccably observed. The Anzac Day Parade wrapped up. That was, as you can see on the banner, the Anzac Spirit. So that's where we end the coverage of the Anzac Day March in Perth. Again, big thanks to my co-commentators Steve Danaher and Paul Salpietro. In a few moments, we're going to cross live to Gallipoli, where hundreds of Australians are waiting for the sun. Of course, they're not the first Australians to come to Anzac Cove in the dawn light.
Fremantle, present day. Like all the Cunard queens, she's a crowd pleaser. 150,000 tonnes with 2,500 passengers leading a life of luxury. Over the next couple of days, tourists will disembark and spend, while Queen Mary II, their city within a city, dominates the port. Now see what a difference a century makes. October 1914. In London, the real Queen Mary, with the King, is at the apex of the vast and threatened British Empire. But here at Fremantle, on the fringes, everything is so much smaller. These two ships, for instance. One of them, Ascanius, requisitioned by the Australian government from the Blue Funnel Line, has a new wartime number, A11. The other, Medic, a White Star liner, is answering to A7. Medic and Ascanius are fractions of the size of QM2. They are not luxurious. They're here to load the first of the West Australians who've answered the Empire's call. Right now, those lads are training at a place called Black Boy Hill. Today, their camp in the hills east of Perth is swallowed by suburbia. Just a piece saved for memories and commemorations. Yet just days after the outbreak of war, this was a busy training and recruitment camp. As the tents were raised, so was the 11th Battalion, the first in the state. The 12th and 16th would follow because in 1914 war was the thing. It's what men did. And who at Black Boy Hill had ever heard of Gallipoli? The newspaper of the day describes recruits as a mixed bag: clerks, miners, prospectors, sleeper cutters and tradesmen, arriving in suits and dungarees, carrying shiny suitcases and swags. More than 30,000 West Australians volunteered for the Great War, and most of them started army life here at Black Boy Hill. They couldn't know, but some had only months to live. Herbert Finch, bank clerk, Fremantle, WA. Died of wounds, Gallipoli, 28th April 1915, age 30. Beresford Arbuckle, boiler attendant, Leederville, WA. Died of wounds, Gallipoli, 12th June 1915, age 22. Thomas Noakes, prospector, Bardock, WA, killed Gallipoli, 1st August 1915, age 29. Charles Glover, miner, Boulder, WA, killed France, 3rd September 1916. Harry Nagel, business manager, North Perth, WA, killed Belgium, 17th October 1917. There were many, many more, remembered by families and the nation as Anzacs. At the end of October, the battalion is ready to move. There's a train journey through Perth to Fremantle, where Ascanius and Medic are waiting. The South Australians are already on board. This being the First World War with different alliances from the Second, a Japanese warship is also in Fremantle. The battlecruiser Ibuki will protect Medic and Ascanius until all three can join the main convoy now steaming north from Albany. Meanwhile, the Kaiser's Emden is loose in the ocean. Off Cocos, although the more powerful Ibuki wants the job, it's HMAS Sydney that breaks away to meet the cruiser and destroy the threat. And so it happens that on the 8th of November 1914, Australians meet Germans before they meet Turks. But there's still time to play the tourist. Egypt, the pyramids. The men of the 11th swarm onto Pharaoh's tomb to pose. Singly or in groups, some smiling, others stern-faced. The result, one of the all-time happy snaps from the war. But now things will change for the worse. Black Boy Hill, Fremantle, to Egypt. You've got to hope they had some fun along the way, because these clerks and miners and prospectors and tradesmen will be among the first to make that dawn landing on the 25th of April, 1915.